Does the American government even work? And if it is broken, what can we do to fix it?
Everything is broken.
Why doesn't U.S. government work? Part of the reason is our system of checks and balances, our separation of powers. There are many good things that come out of the separation of powers, but it also results in our government working against itself and in citizens not being clear on who is responsible for what policy. And that's not just a matter of citizens' ignorance. Our policies are often objectively the result of many different forces in many different institutions. Not all democracies have separation of powers. In a unified government, like the United Kingdom, it is always clear to voters which party is responsible for a given set of policies. Not so in the U.S. In our country,
usually the president, the single most visible figure, will get credit when things go well, blame when things do not go well, regardless of who is actually responsible for the success or failure
of policies. Because it can be so difficult to figure out who was actually in charge when things went wrong, as our country has become more polarized, voters have tended more and more to simply blame all failures on the party that they already do not like. Some of those voters are undoubtedly partisan enough that they would always vote on ideological or partisan grounds, no matter what. But there are a significant number of Americans who probably would like to be able to evaluate policies by their success or failure and vote accordingly. It may well be that some of these would-be pragmatic voters are pushed into partisanship partly because they can't figure out who to blame for ineffective policy or who to give credit when policies work. And the separation of powers increases the percentage of the time that policies are failures. It's becoming the norm that the government is unable to pass legislation or put policies into place to deal with the most pressing current issues. In contrast, unified governments, governments that do not have a separation of powers, one party is in charge generally, and that party is able to put its program into action. If that program seems successful, if it seems to have worked to help conditions in the country, voters are quite likely to reward that party with re-election. But when policies do not work, the party in power is quite likely to find itself being voted out of power. In the United States, the party that holds the smaller share of governmental power has every opportunity and every motive to sabotage the plans of the majority party.
This is not an unusual or an unlikely possibility. In fact, it is quite common.
Yeah, 100% of my focus is on stopping this new administration, and that's 100% of my focus. 100% of my focus is on standing up to this administration. What we have in the United States Senate is total unity from Susan Collins to Ted Cruz in opposition to what the new Biden administration is trying to do to this country.
This isn't just an isolated incident. The dynamics were the same in 2010.
Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
Some people have interpreted this to suggest that Senator McConnell is a hypocrite or that he doesn't want what's best for the country. But that's not necessarily true. After all, McConnell has openly advocated a set of positions that are different from those put forward by Presidents Biden and Obama and the rest of the Democratic Party.
Our primary legislative goals are to repeal and replace the health spending bill, to end the bailouts, cut spending, and shrink the size and scope of government. The only way to do all of those things is to put someone in the White House who won't veto any of these things. That's my single most important political goal, along with every active Republican in the country.
Whatever you think of McConnell or any other Senate leader, a system like our current one, which allows and rewards sabotage of the other party's agenda, creates dysfunction. Sure, we'd all love it if our leaders put the interests of the country ahead of their own reelection. We can find examples of such leaders throughout our history and the histories of other countries, but in the longer run, relying on leaders employing losing strategies, strategies that make it more likely they will fail to win an election, will be futile. It's a recipe for continuing the dysfunctional path that we are now on. We need to change the incentive structure, change the current system, if we want a well-functioning government. Many of the problems with U.S. government's dysfunction would be extremely difficult to change, requiring a constitutional amendment. But there is one reform that would do quite a bit towards sending the U.S. down the path towards being able to make policy. One such reform that could be accomplished with a simple vote of the Senate. We turn now to that issue, filibuster reform.